Thanks for joining us here on Facebook as we meet the candidates. In this case, the candidates running for mayor of Richmond. I'm joined tonight by Richmond Mayor Levar Stoney, who is running for re-election. Candace is standing by hopefully with your questions. So please start sending your questions in, the questions you have for the mayor. And that way we can keep this conversation going. And it's not just me sitting up here asking questions, because I already had a chance on the CBS 6 News at 7. But I did want to, Mr. Mayor, since we didn't have time earlier, to talk about development. For example, the Navy Hill project was criticized. It was rejected by the council. Many said it was too opaque in all the details and that the numbers didn't add up. For example, the predictions on non-tenants who would come to that area, that the numbers seem to be higher than comparable areas in Raleigh and Charlotte or even Charlottesville. What did you take away from the failure of that project?
You know, what I've taken away is that despite the rejection of Navy Hill, we still have a downtown that's been underinvested in, a downtown that's been on the brink for decades now, and we still need to invest in downtown. And I believe whether it's downtown or Greater Scots Addition or the Fulton Gas Works, that we need to use city-owned land, city-owned real estate as an economic stimulus during these most difficult times. And that's exactly was the reasoning behind Navy Hill. We knew that the long recovery from the recession back in 2008 was going to end at some point, and we wanted to insulate ourselves from a downturn. We would have had 10,000 jobs, $300 million focused on black and brown small businesses. And now, you know, we're not there anymore. But that doesn't mean that we still don't have a problem in the city. And that problem is a decaying downtown that needs our help and our investment.
At the same time, affordable housing is a huge issue. And some of the council members said that the actual numbers of units that were to be built seemed a little squishy, seemed like 300 were promised, but then maybe it wouldn't be 300, or maybe more were promised at first. Because affordable housing is kind of the devil in the details, because everybody would like to build a sparkling high-rise, but you've also got to make it a city for everybody.
Yeah, and affordable housing was a main tenet of the Navy Hill project, and it was one that I actually negotiated and got more than I think that the developers even wanted to add into the project. But nonetheless, doesn't change the fact without Navy Hill, we still have a housing crisis here in the city where roughly 45% of our residents who live inside the city limits are spending more than 30% of their household income on housing. And that's why I, a couple weeks ago, proposed a dedicated funding stream for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I'm proud that we've tripled the Affordable Housing Trust Fund during my time as mayor, but we got to do more. We need 10,000 affordable housing units, all levels of affordability, 10,000 by 2030. That means we need 1,000 a year. Now, I made a goal back in 2018 that we built 1,500 units by 2023. I'm proud of the fact that we've got 1,900 either constructed or in the queue by the end of 2020. We have to create a place where everyone could live. If you live in Gilpin Court, if you live in Creighton, you should be able to live and work in our city. And right now, that is not the possibility for a lot of those who live in our city. And that's what we have to create over the course of not just the next 4 years, but the next decade.
And doing something about the courts obviously involves different agencies, it involves different governments, a lot of federal Section 8 money. Do you have a long-term vision for what should happen to the courts? Because obviously you can't move people out without a place to go.
Yes, I do have a long-term vision. And here's the thing. Elected leaders, politicians have to stop talking about the need to transform public housing, and we have to get to work collaborating with the RRHA, Richmond Redevelopment Housing Authority, and make it work and make it happen. Here's the thing. Gilpin Court will be 80 years old come 2022.
And it shows it.
That's right. Creighton Court will be 70 years old come 2022. We owe those who live in those units today a roadmap to where they're going to be in the future. So if you live in public housing today, you deserve a home in the city of Richmond tomorrow. And that is what we're going to focus on, working with the private sector.
Well, to a little smaller bore here. We've heard from a lot of contractors about the permitting process in the city of Richmond. Yeah. They say it is just insanely long. I have a neighbor who said it took her almost 3 months to get the permits for her renovation, which I'm not an expert, but it didn't strike me as anything extravagant. What do you say to those folks who say, you know what, it's much faster to get a permit in Henrico or Chesterfield than it is in Richmond? What or what have you not done to speed up that process? Because I remember 4 years ago, you said you're going to audit every department. We're going to go right through and sort of streamline. You've got a lot of energy. But why is permitting, just that word itself, such a hazard for contractors, for builders, and for homeowners?
Well, the one thing I learned for the last 4 years is the biggest room in City Hall is the room for improvement. And permits and inspections are right on that list. But let me give you just a couple numbers right here. From March 2019 to March 2020, we've had 1,900 permits that have been permits for a multifamily housing in the city of Richmond. That's a plus 900 on top of the previous year. That's a 46% increase. Since 2013, we've had 46% of the multifamily apartments built in the region all have happened in the city of Richmond. So what we've seen from permits and inspections, they've been inundated with the growth. We've had a lot of attrition as well, and we have not been able to keep up. Now, I'm proud of those numbers, but we have to keep up with this growth because the dollars of that growth go into our coffers moving forward. So what we have focused on is new leadership. Sharon Ebert at Economic Development, Jason Carlangelo at our Building Commissioner, people I've brought in while I was here, and also start to use technology to make the process more efficient. Now, if you own a single-family home, you can get your residential permits online. You can now file online as well.
So how quickly will that be? In other words, if I'm saying, well, you know what, I think I might just want to renovate my house, when would I expect either I or my contractor to be able to say, you know what, I can get that contract turned around in days, in weeks?
Well, obviously our goal is to get it turned around in weeks. So what we're going to be focused on is hiring more people, but paying them decent wages. The reason we've had this problem is that this is a public sector organization. This is government. We hire people and we don't pay them enough, and we develop them here in Richmond. And guess what? They end up in Henrico. They end up in Chesterfield. So we're going to hire good people, talented people, and keep them by paying them a proper wage. And beyond that, when we actually have times where attrition is a problem, or when we are being inundated, we're going to bring a third party, a vendor in basically to hold us through those tough and difficult times.
Because I know it must be tough, but you're constantly compared to the way things are run in the counties. And as you said, sometimes it happens in the police department. You train an officer here, and that officer might say, you know what, it's better pay and
that's exactly
the hours
right.
that I want.
And I think that, what I've done with my budgeting in the past couple of years is that there's a cost of doing business as a local government, and that cost is investing in your human capital. And what we did after the recession back in 2008, we had to cut back on government, and we also cut back on the wages and salaries of those who work for local government. Now, this is the pathway for the middle class, and so what I've done is I've invested back in our employees. We've given them those pay increases. I've given them those step increases because we have to compete with the localities. Henrico, Chesterfield, Hanover, they're all paying their employees better wages than we get paid here in Richmond. We're doing our best to keep up.
Candace has been standing by very patiently. And so what are you hearing from our Facebook friends?
So monitoring Facebook, we have a few questions. And we also had questions from earlier today when we first posted that you were going to be here in our studio. Patrick O'Grady is asking, he says, Chesterfield and Henrico have lower taxes than Richmond. And he says, in his opinion, they have better roads and schools. How do you explain this, and what do you plan to do to fix it?
Well, Henrico and Chesterfield are also newer than Richmond, by the way. Richmond is, in 17 years, will be 300 years old.
Well, doesn't Henrico have that 400-year logo on all their placards?
We're an older locality, right? So when you build something out there in Henrico, you're building normally in new land that has not been touched before. This is one of the older localities, oldest cities, one of the oldest cities here in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Old water mains.
Yeah, this is all different. I mean, there's another world underneath the roads in the city of Richmond. So totally different, okay? But also, we have a different population of people as well, different demographics as well. Our population has a lot more needs than those in Henrico and Chesterfield, but if you talk to Henrico and Chesterfield, they'll tell you they're urbanizing as well. Another thing, we are the capital of the Commonwealth of Virginia. That means a lot of our land here in the city is tax exempt. That means areas that the Commonwealth of Virginia owns, they don't pay any taxes. And so we have to find those taxes, those revenues in other ways. And that's why you see a difference. It's comparing apples and oranges to Henrico and Chesterfield. Every capital city in the United States of America has the same problem that Richmond has. There's never enough revenue because a lot of the land is occupied by the state.
And of course, a consent decree on the sewage system means that the sewer rates, the water rates in the city are abnormally high and significantly higher than the county's rates for similar services.
That's right. We have to, we have an older infrastructure when it comes to our roads, but also into our sewer system as well. We have a CSO, a combined sewer overflow, that we've made some great gains over the course of the last 30 years. The James River is a whole lot cleaner it is today than it was in the 70s, okay?
People still blanch when they hear about what happens in a big rainstorm, though.
That's right, they do, and that's why we've been focused on investing and focusing on keeping up with our commitments to the EPA and also the DEQ as well, and that's an investment that we will continue to make, but we also need partners at the table as well. I'm not going to sit here and tell you today that the city can carry the burden alone to fixing our combined sewer overflow. This needs to be investment from the state, and that's exactly what we fought for this past General Assembly session. There was a bill that was proposed by Senator Joe Morrissey that stated that we would have to carry that burden. The ratepayers who pay the water rates here in the city would have to carry that burden here in the city, and we said, heck no. The state has to do their part. And so the bill that Governor Northam signed will put the state also on the hook as well.
Earlier today, we got a lot of questions posted about the removal of the statues on Monument Avenue. Many people questioning the funding that was used. Can you address their questions and then also tell us what your plans would be for Monument Avenue moving forward?
$1.8 million was the contract, and you invoked emergency protocols, sort of bypassing, I believe that very day, the council got the right to debate or decide the fate of jurisdictions within their boundaries, and yet you invoked the emergency powers, not giving the council time to debate that issue. First of all, why the urgency there? And then we'll talk about the contract in a minute.
Well, the urgency went back to June, right? I had already committed, standing alongside Governor Northam, stating that we would commit to removing the monuments. And all 9 members of the City Council agreed that we would remove those monuments through the process that would begin on July 1. However, what changed was what happened in Portsmouth, when there were folks from the community who were trying to remove that monument by themselves in downtown, the square in Portsmouth. A statue fell on a man. He flatlined, I think, 2 or 3 times. And we'd already seen that happen already in Richmond, where people were removing monuments on their own. And so we said, this could continue all the way through. And that the monuments here in Richmond are a whole lot different than the monuments anywhere else in the United States of America. These are the granddaddy monuments of them all. And so I didn't want what happened in Portsmouth to happen in my city. And so I did evoke those emergency powers on July 1, and we began the removal of those monuments. And here's the thing. My team, starting sometime in June after I saw what happened in Portsmouth, scoured Central Virginia, we scoured the Commonwealth, we scoured the Mid-Atlantic to find someone willing to actually do the job. And many people rejected us and said no. Now, one person did step up, one firm did step up, a firm owned by a black man. And am I surprised? I'm not surprised at all. He put himself on the line, he put his family on the line, and he put his business on the line as well. But you know what? What we did on July 1 was appropriate, it was legal, and it was right.
And so $1.8 million, and that business owner also happened to be a donor, a supporter of yours.
Some years ago, all cumulative as well, never in one lump sum, all cumulative. And here's the thing. We went through a procurement process where I was not involved in the selection. I don't get involved in the selection of firms for any job, whether it's a DPW job, Department of Public Works job, or a Parks and Recreation job. I don't get involved in that. But did I sign off on it at the end? Yes, I did. But I did not know this was the gentleman at the time. I signed off on it because we needed to get them removed. This was the only person who would be willing to remove them. And
your chief of staff sent us all voluminous emails about inquiries out to all the various firms who were not interested. So what is, to Candace's question, what is your vision then for Monument Avenue?
Here's the thing. What I've heard from those who, from other parts of our community, is that they want an inclusive and welcoming Monument Avenue. And what folks have stated to me before, folks who even were protesters, who said that we just thought that Monument Avenue was not open to us. And so moving forward, I want a robust community engagement process that not only includes the neighbors and the residents who live along that great corridor right there of tree-lined streets, but also we need the community voices involved in this process too. And whether it's fountains or whether it's inclusive green space or monuments to other heroes and sheroes in Richmond, it needs to be built and created by the voices of our community collectively.
All right, Candace?
Sticking along those lines, because this had to do with monuments, the protests that were happening, another question from Facebook. You've been very vocal about police reform and even created a civilian review team, a task force to reimagine public safety. Moving forward, if you were to be reelected, how do you visualize policing in Richmond?
Yes, I'm committed to those reforms. I think, like I said earlier, I want a police department that's accredited by the community. We have been a police department that's always worked on building community trust. Building that community trust allows us to solve crimes. What I hear from my community, what I hear particularly from the black and brown communities, those in the East End and those in the South Side, they say to me, Mr. Mayor, we want the police department and we need the police department. But what we want is we want the same police department that shows them in the West End, that shows them in the East End, a police department that we can trust and gives us respect. So what we've been focused on is reimagining public safety. We believe that you can bring a human services lens to how we actually keep our community safe and not keep on piling everything that we do in terms of safety onto our police department. If your child doesn't get up in the morning, if there's a cat in a tree, who do you call? You call 911, you ask for a police officer to show up. So what we're going to do is but we believe that an armed officer doesn't have to show up at every non-criminal offense. We can build out a community care team of social workers, mental health workers.
We've heard a lot about the mental health worker,
Yeah.
Marcus Peters, who was killed, who's seemingly having an episode off the highway there. Is that part of it, part of the mental health?
Yes.
A unit or someone, a personnel that could somehow intervene before somebody with a gun needs to resolve the situation. Exactly
right. That sort of community care team that is there to hopefully resolve the incident without any sort of law enforcement involvement. We need to fund the Marcus Alert. I support that as well. And also going to transparency and accountability, I believe in a civilian review board that is independent of the police department with subpoena power as well. Those good police departments around this country are the ones that have no problem being accountable, have no problem being transparent. And that's exactly what I want for the Richmond Police Department.
We've heard all summer long complaints about was there any pressure from the top on police to slow down, say, the policing of vandalism along Monument Avenue or indeed all the way over to Broad Street? We've had complaints from business owners who said mobs were basically allowed, or even just individuals allowed to sort of recklessly do some damage and move on. What do you say about that? And some businesses say, I'm not going to reopen again on that part of Broad. I mean, because obviously all the focus is on Monument Avenue, but when you look at the desecration of all the monuments on Monument Avenue, why no cleanup? Why is there no effort to sort of change or repair what's been done?
Yeah, first, I know there are opponents out there of mine in this race who have continued to mislead the voters. And I don't want to mislead the voters here. And I have to say this one more time like I'm a broken record. That is, there was never a command from the top, from this office, asking anyone ever to stand down. I've always asked the Richmond Police Department to do their job, and that's exactly what they did. They did their job. Now, here's the thing. Over the course of the last few months, I've had folks on one side, those who are the police officers or those who support the police department say that we didn't allow them to show up, and I have other folks who said the police department was too aggressive in their approach as well. And they've asked me to choose a side in that process as well, and I've always said I'm going to choose the side of Richmond and do my job, using the data and information I get at that time to make real-time decisions.
All right.
A lot of questions coming in right now about your plan for the homeless in the city. How will they be protected and taken care of if you are to hold office?
Yeah, you know, over the last year, we've been working on a strategic plan for the homelessness here in our city. And what we've normally done in the past is we've had a cold weather overflow shelter, hypothermia shelter, and it was at the Andy Giles Center. And part of that strategic plan says that we should not use congregate gatherings like that moving forward. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to execute that plan, particularly during COVID-19. That's the last thing you want, is to put people in those sort of congregate situations. And so what we have done over the course of the last few months, particularly since COVID-19 hit, was we've housed 700 people who were experiencing homelessness. And we've been able to put 30 of them into permanent housing as well over the course of time. And that's a great thing. So moving forward, we're going to continue to use our hotel housing plan, in which we were one of the models in the country on this. And we also are going to extend the hours of the homeless crisis line as well. We want an individual who shows up and they are experiencing housing insecurity during a pandemic to show up to a room with air conditioning or heat, with covers, a bed, soap, water, things you don't get when you're sleeping on the floor in congregate housing at a cold weather overflow shelter.
Is there a reliable census of how many homeless there are, or how many children among the homeless?
You know, there's a count that's done. I can't call the number right now, Bill, but also I will say this. The one issue as well with the cold weather overflow shelter was that you're not allowed to bring your children, you're not allowed to bring your pet, you're not allowed to bring your partner as well. And so I think what we have to do is we have to create a compassionate system, working with the Greater Continuum of Care, a number of nonprofits in our community, to meet those who are experiencing homelessness where they are. And they, just like us, it's not a monolith. It's a diversity of different needs. We should meet them where they are on their needs.
You mentioned COVID-19, so I just want to bring up this question that Nick Pring brought up. He's asking where your mask is, and I just want to say that Bill and Mayor Stoney are 6 feet apart on the desk, and he did walk in with a mask. I just wanted to give you an opportunity.
Mr. Pring, I will say this: I am a mask. I love masks. We need masks. Without a therapy or without a vaccine, this is the biggest tool that we have. The greatest tool that we have is this mask.
Yes, our masks are on as well the minute we're off the set, and we do stay 6 feet apart.
Okay, now that we've addressed that, on your website you say education is your top priority. Can you share with us, since you've been in office for 4 years, the specifics of what you've done to help Richmond Public Schools? How are they better since you've been serving as mayor?
You mentioned the 3 new schools off the top.
Yes, what I'm proud of is what I said. You have to judge politicians on the promises they make during their campaigns and whether or not they've kept their promises. Say what you mean and mean what you say. And I said I wanted to be the education mayor. And I feel like I fulfilled that promise. I said that I would put more dollars in the Richmond Public Schools, that we can actually start investing in our children inside the classroom, giving teacher raises, more guidance counselors, more nurses, and also fixing these the roofing issues, the leaky roofs, and remediating mold. And we've done that. Have we done it all of 100%? No. But we put more dollars in the Richmond Public Schools than any administration in a generation. $30 million in new money. We built 3 new schools, 2 in Southside, 1 in the East End. We expanded after-school programs. Now every elementary schooler, every middle schooler has access to an after-school program here in the city of Richmond. Now moving forward, what I want to do for Richmond Public Schools, my job is to fund the needs. The Dreams for RPS plan that's been approved by the school board, approved by the community, I need to continue to fund that. That's my commitment. 57 cents on every real estate tax dollar now goes to Richmond Public Schools. That means as we grow our community, as we grow as a community, the tax base, their budget grows as well. And so that's going to be my commitment. But also, it's time for us to live up to the claim that public education is the great equalizer, right? How can public education be the great equalizer if 59% of Richmond kindergartners show up on day 1 unprepared to learn? We have to start earlier. And that's why in the course of the next 4 years, my commitment is that we are going to create free universal pre-K for each 3-year-old and each 4-year-old in the city of Richmond. Because we know that gap right there, those 59% of those folks those kids who start on day 1 unprepared, that deficit can persist through their time through K through 12. They get to 3rd grade and they can't read well. And then they get to 12th grade and they either may have dropped out or they may not graduate with the skills necessary to compete in the 21st century economy.
And the graduation rate, though, remains troublingly low for Richmond Public Schools compared to the counterparts in the counties.
Yes, it's low, and I've obviously talked to the leaders at RPS about this, but here's the change of what Mr. Cameron and the school board are doing now compared to what they were doing prior. When my opponent sat on the school board, Ms. Gray sat on the school board, we were simply just rubber stamping graduations, rubber stamping diplomas. So they were graduating with something of value to compete in this 21st century economy. We're not doing that anymore. And when you're not rubber stamping diplomas, you're not going to get that high number of graduation rates as well. What I think we should judge our children on, our students on, just like I judge Jason Cameras, is on the growth that we make, right? If we get a 5th grader who's reading at a 2nd grade level, and the teacher is able to get that 2nd grader up to 5th grade reading level, that is a success. And we should recognize that the success of the teacher and of the student. And that's the same thing how I treat Mr. Cameras and his work. I gave him a B+ because he's doing a heck of a job right now. He took a system that was obviously on the brink, and we've seen growth. We should judge RPS on the growth and the progress, not on just some simple letter grades at all times.
Last question from over here. Why are you still the man for this job?
I'm still the man for the job because of my experience. You know, I did take this job when I was 35 years old, and I've been through it. Sometimes it's been stormy, but I got to bring a big umbrella. The experience has been able to allow me to grow into this role, and I think right now more than ever, you need a mayor who can lead during the most difficult times I've seen in the city's history. This is the most critical time. You know, I compare the next decade to what happened after Reconstruction, what happened after the Civil Rights Movement. So you need someone who can actually navigate these most difficult times for the city, and I believe the proof will be in the pudding. We will be judged on whether or not this is a true reckoning for Richmond is on 2030. That will be the real test. Whether or not we close the gaps between Black Richmonders and white Richmonders, or we close the gap between the have or have-nots. That, to me, will be whether or not it's a true reckoning of the city. And guess what? I don't want my city to miss her moment. That's why I'm running for another 4 years, because I don't want us to miss our moment, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure we meet the moment.
All right. We thank you for your time,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor. Mayor
Thank you.
LeVar Stoney explaining why he is the man for the job. Candace, of course, handling all those questions.
Yes, thank you all for writing them so we could ask Mayor Stoney, and thank you for answering them.
And we have been bringing you the candidates for mayor of Richmond. The final of the 5 candidates that we've been interviewing will be Alexis Rogers tomorrow night at 7:30 on your CBS6 Facebook page. We want to thank you for spending some time with us.